Where are Gaza's neighborhoods destroyed by Israel? The Gaza Strip has sustained widespread destruction as the Israeli military has bombarded the besieged enclave of 2.3 million people for more than 2 weeks. Even its south, which Israel had declared a safe zone, has not been spared. Satellite imagery and photographs show entire neighborhoods have been leveled with many hospitals, schools, places of worship, and homes damaged or destroyed by Israeli land, sea, and air attacks. In the following infographic series, Al Jazeera maps out Gaza's damaged communities and neighborhoods across the Strip's 5 governorates: North Gaza, Gaza City, Deir al-Balah, Khan Yunis, and Rafah. Gaza's densely populated neighborhoods. Bordered by Israel and Egypt on the Mediterranean coast, the Gaza Strip is 365 km, 141 miles. At only 41 km, 25 miles long, it can take less than an hour to drive from Bayt Hanun in the north to Rafah in the south. The Palestinian enclave has a population of 2.3 million people, including 1.7 million refugees who are ethnically cleansed from areas that now form part of Israel. Most refugees live in or near Gaza's 8 refugee camps. Since 2007, when Hamas came to power, Israel has maintained strict control over Gaza's airspace and territorial waters and restricted the movement of goods and people in and out of Gaza. North Gaza extends for 10 km, 6 miles, and shares the only crossing into Israel through Beit Hanun, also known as the Erez Crossing. North Gaza is home to the Jabalia refugee camp, the largest in the Strip. The 61 ski km, 24 ski mile area is home to 440,000 people and includes the following communities and neighborhoods: Beit Lahaya, Beit Hanun, Jabalia refugee camp, Madanet al-Ada, and Jabalia al-Balad. Jabalia refugee camp. The Israeli military has repeatedly hit the Jabalia camp, including on October 9, 12, 19, and 22, killing more than 150 people. The camp houses 3 United Nations-run schools, which have been converted into shelters for hundreds of displaced families. Gaza City is the largest and most populous city within the Gaza Strip with more than 750,000 residents. Located along Gaza's Mediterranean coastline are the neighborhoods of Gaza Harbor, the Shadi refugee camp, and northern and southern Raimel. Raimel neighborhoods. At the heart of the Raimel neighborhoods is Al-Shifa Hospital, the largest medical facility in the Gaza Strip. Tens of thousands of displaced Palestinians are sheltering at the hospital, where Palestinian doctors are warning of an impending infectious disease outbreak due to overcrowding. Surrounding the hospital are several UN compounds, including the Relief and Works Agency for Palestine Refugees, UNRW, the Office of the UN Special Coordinator for the Middle East Peace Process, UNSCO, and the UN Development Program, UNDP. Gaza's top universities, including the Islamic University of Gaza, Al-Azhar University Gaza, and Al-Aqsa University, which are just a few hundred meters apart, are also located in Raimel. On October 7, Israeli warplanes destroyed the Palestine Tower, a 14-story residential tower in Raimel, reducing it to rubble. The moment was captured live on camera behind Al Jazeera's Yumna El Sayed. Israeli attacks have targeted the Shadi refugee camp, also known as Beach Camp, several times, terrifying its 90,000 inhabitants living on 0.52 km, 0.2 miles of land. On October 9, Israeli strikes destroyed the Yasin Mosque, one of at least 11 mosques that have been destroyed since October 7. Farther east are the neighborhoods of Sheikh Radwan, Al-Nasser, Al-Daraj, Al-Tafa, Al-Sabra, and Tel al-Hawa. Tel al-Hawa. On Wednesday, Israeli strikes hit areas near Al-Quds Hospital in Tel al-Hawa. More than 8,000 Palestinians had taken refuge at the hospital, which was previously destroyed by Israeli forces in 2009. Just north of the Zaytun neighborhood is Gaza's Old City, which is home to several historical sites, including the Great Omari Mosque, known as Gaza's Great Mosque, and 2 of Gaza's churches, Stupup the Evangelist Chapel and Storfurius Church. On Tuesday, a massive blast at Al-Ahli Arab Hospital, also in the Old City, killed nearly 500 Palestinians, many of whom were taking shelter from Israeli bombing. The Ministry of Health in Gaza said the blast was caused by an Israeli air raid. Israel has attributed the explosion to a misfired rocket launched by the Palestinian Islamic Jihad (PIJ) armed group. The PIJ has denied the allegation. An Al Jazeera investigation has debunked Israel's claim. 2 days later, an Israeli air attack killed at least 18 people who were sheltering in the Est Porphyrius Church, Gaza's oldest church, which was built between the 1150s and 1160s. A Palestinian pastor has called the bombing of Est Porphyrius, where hundreds of people had taken refuge, a war crime. One of the largest neighborhoods in Gaza City is Shujaya, which in Arabic means courage.